All right, guys, it's Miss Soulsby again, the fraction fairy. All right, so we've been talking about fractions. Can you see my crown? We've been talking about fractions, okay? We all know that a fraction is a part of a whole group or a part of a whole object, okay? It's those parts that it's divided into, okay? All right, and we're going to continue talking about, who remembers from last time? Fractions, but equivalent fractions, okay? Equivalent fractions are fractions that are equal, okay? The two parallel lines, that symbol equal, okay? So equivalent fractions. Last time we found out all the equivalent fractions that were equal to one whole, okay? That being said, we know that 2 halves are equal to 1 whole. We know that 4 fourths. So make sure you have these cards in front of you so you can reference them as we're going through them. So get your things back out and kind of follow along with me, so that, because we're going to be using these today to do the next equivalent fractions lesson. Okay, so we know that 1 whole or 4 fourths is equivalent to 1 whole. We talked about 2 halves, 4 fourths, and then we have eighths. So we know that all of these are equal. Okay, the parts are smaller in the eighths. Okay, and then the last unit fractions that we talked about were 6. 6 is also equal to 1 whole. And then, there's my 1 whole. 3/3. I don't know what happened to my 3/3. It flew away. Oh, here it is. All right, 3/3 is also equivalent to 1 whole. Okay, notice if I stack these on top of each other, my whole did not change. Okay, these are all equal. Okay, they're all the same. The parts are the ones that we're going to look at today. Okay, we're going to be looking at what fractions are equivalent to a half. Okay, half. I'd rather have a whole cookie though. But if I want to share or divide my cookie in half, okay, I need to have how many equal parts? 2 equal parts is a half, okay? All right, so what we're going to be looking at today is what unit fractions are equal to 1 half, okay? All right, so I'm going to get my half of my fraction, my unit fraction. Let me find it. Okay. All right, here's my half. Okay. We're now fold it in half. So you just have 1 out of the 2 parts here. Okay. All right. So let's think about this. Okay. What other parts of the whole are equal to 1 of these halves? Well, what I would do is I would take the other wholes and fold them into 1 part. Okay, so let's take, well, this whole, those are not equal. Okay, so 1 whole is not equal to a half. All right, let's look at the fourths. Okay, all right, now if I fold this in half, okay, now is that equal to a half? How many fourths is that if I put it on top of each other? Okay, those are equal parts. Do you agree? Yeah. So 2 of those fourths is equal to a half. And you put those side by side, those are equal areas. Okay. All right. So we know that 2 of these fourths, I'm going to lay those here. 2 of these, let's see if you can see them. 2 of those are equal to 1 half. Okay. Uh-oh. I'm dropping stuff. Okay. Okay, now I know that my other unit fraction is eighths. Okay, so I'm going to take my eighths again, and I'm going to fold it in half. Now, how many parts do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 parts out of 8 that are equal to a half. So now I have eighths. Now, let me move these over so you can see. Kind of visualize. Okay. Now I have that 4 of those eighths is equivalent to a half. Okay. All right. So if we look at those are the same exact areas that make up a half. Okay. All right. And how we're going to write this, so I'm going to move it forward a little bit. So now we have found the fractions that are equivalent to 1/2, boys and girls. Okay. All right. So let's look at the numerators and the denominators and see if we can just visualize, now that we have a visual of the areas of the half. Now, if we write the numerator and the denominator, the part of the whole, okay, I'm going to choose blue this time. All right, so we're finding equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions. Okay, and then we're talking about 1/2. Looks like this one's running out. I'm going to get a different one. I'll do this blue. Okay. All right, can everybody see that? Let me move it a little closer. Okay. All right. So we have equivalent fractions, ones that equal 1/2. Okay. So how we write that is 1/2, because there's 2 parts. Okay. 1/2 is equal, put your equal sign, is equal to 2 out of 4. Okay. 2/4. Okay. So 1/2 is equal to 2/4, which is also equal to how many eighths? How many eighths do we find that are equivalent to a half? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So 4/8. Okay. All right. So now we know that 1/2 is equal to 2/4. Okay. And we also know that 1/2 is equal to 2/4 and 4/8. Okay, boys and girls. Now, if you write that in word form, this is what it should look like. Okay. So get your notes page back out and let's write some words. Okay. All right. So we know that these are all equal parts. And if you look at, boys and girls, if you look at what the numerator and the denominator are, okay? If you look up here, what is half of 4? Well, half of 4 is 2. That's the numerator. What is half of 8? Is 4. Okay? So all these are equivalent to 1/2. Okay? So if you just see the fraction numbers and without a visual, okay, you can look at the denominator and compare it to the numerator to see if it's equivalent to a half. Okay? I always encourage you to draw a model. Okay? Or fold a piece of paper, whatever you need to do. All right, so let's do in word form. So we did 1/2 here, and then we're going to do 2, TWO, 2/4 is this one, and then 4/8 is this one. Okay, 4/8. Okay, so those are the only fractions that we need to find that are equivalent to a half. Okay. You'll do more with equivalent fractions to a half in 4th grade, but for 3rd grade purposes, the only unit fraction we go up to is eighths, okay? So make sure that you're keeping these models, like I said, so that you can have a visual. Now, if you want to make like a little poster with these or glue these in, if you have your math journal, you can glue these in to your math journal and title it Equivalent Fractions, okay? Just so that you have that for your reference. All right. All right. So I wish I could ask for questions. If you have questions about equivalent fractions up to a half and then up to 1/2. Hopefully you have gotten some visual practice and manipulative practice with this. The next thing we're going to do instead of looking at an area model or a quadrilateral, we're going to be looking at number lines, okay? We're going to be looking at number lines from 0 to 1 and how to break those up into parts of a whole, okay? Now, visualizing a number line. What do we use that in real life? How do we use a number line in real life? Well, I remember using some kind of number line when we did area. And I remember we did it when we did perimeter. And we used different units with a number line. And that number line had like units of inches and centimeters. And then I remember even using a unit of 1 foot. Yeah, real life number lines are like a ruler or a metric stick or I've got my yardstick, a yardstick, okay? This is like a number line, whether you hold it horizontally or vertically, okay? The measurements or the units are not going to change, okay? The units on here are inches and centimeters. And I think millimeters on the back. Looks like, no, centimeters on the back and inches up at the top, okay? So the thing about a number line, it can go in either direction, okay? The numbers, wherever you start, can go in either direction, okay? All right, so let's look at what the flip chart has next. So we did equivalent fractions. Let me just check. Okay, yeah, how many eighths are equivalent to a half? We figured that out. 4 eighths, okay? And then we have it written just like how I showed you up here. Yep. All right, and then we doubled it. Okay. You know what I forgot before we move on to number lines? I forgot to do the thirds, okay? So what equivalent fractions are equal to 1/3, okay? All right, so if I have, here are my thirds, 3/3. If I fold it back into just one of those parts, 1/3, okay? Now, if I double 3, I know that's 6, okay? So if I fold my sixths in half again, how many sixths equal to 1/3? Well, 1 2/6. So I can write that right here. So now, let me move it over a little bit. It looks like. Okay. All right. Oh, here's my blue. Blue. All right, so now 1/3 is equal to how many sixths? 2. 3. 3/6. Okay? Because if you look at what is half of 6? Or no. Sorry, 2/6. My bad. 3/6 is equal to a half. We're not doing half. So 2 of these sixths is equal to 1/3. Okay. All right. So if you looked at that again visually, take your 1/3 part and then put it on top. Okay. And notice that those parts are equal. Okay. 2/6 is equal to 1/3. Okay. And how we write that is 1/3 is equal to 2/6. Okay. Or vice versa. Okay. If you notice that has a question mark at the top. Well, we just figured out that that 1/3, that one of the, oh my goodness, 1/3 is equivalent to 2 of these sixths, okay? And if I wanted to show that visually, why is it giving me this circle? I don't want you to circle. It is not a polygon that I need. Let's see. If I want to show you visually again up here, okay, here's my hole, okay. I'm going to double my hole because I need 2 to compare. And then I'm going to paste it, okay. Here's my 2 holes. Now if I divide them equally, okay, for my thirds, Okay, remember this is going to be an approximation because it's kind of hard to do thirds again. So, whoop. Line. Oh, and then I want to do black so it'll actually show up. All right. Oh, why did it do that again? Hold on. It's been a little while since I've used this little teaching tool here. Okay, well, I'm just going to use my pen instead of using the other option. Okay, now that's an approximation, okay? Because, God, I wish that screen is really bright. What if I change the color? You can see it better. Is that better? Oh yeah, that's better. Okay, cool. All right, so there's 3/3, and then if I do the same exact parts of the whole into thirds, and then I cut it in half, the whole is not changed. Now I have 1/6, 1/6, then I have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and then 1/6, 1/6, 1/6. Now if you look at these two, okay, I'm going to take my highlighter and show you. Now 1/3 is, and if you have a visual drawn out, now you can kind of see that one of these thirds is equal to 2 of these sixths, okay? So 2 sixths is equal to 1/3, okay? So that's another visual if you have it drawn, okay? But remember to keep the holes the same. All right. All right. So number lines, okay, boys and girls. Number lines. This one has arrows on either end. That means it goes in one direction for infinity, okay? Those arrows indicate that it goes on forever and ever, okay? I'm trying to see if I can change. Uh-oh. Is that better to see, though? I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. All right. Well, here's one hole. All right. If we're looking at number lines and trying to find equivalent fractions that are half, okay? Now I have my one hole. Now if I line it up directly underneath it, okay, and then I can move it just to verify, okay? Now we always want to start, for our purposes, start at 0 because we've only talked about holes in the sense of just going to one hole, okay? Let me move this a little closer so you can see. I don't like the lighting on that. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm going to try to figure that out for the next one. Can you see my 0? Oh, yeah. Which looks backwards. 0 to 1. Okay? 1 being my whole. And if you want to write 1/1 here, that would be meaningful. Oh, not 2. That's for the next one. 1/1, because we know if the numerator and the denominator are the same, those are equivalent to 1 whole. Okay? All right, so this is one whole. And when you're talking about number lines and fractions, you're also thinking about the jumps that you're going to make to figure out the parts of the whole. Okay, so if I go 0 to 1, that is just one whole jump, 1 out of 1. Now I need to go back and label my 0 here and my 1 here. All right? Now, well, should this be 1 though? How many parts do I have? Well, first let's make the jumps. Start at 0, first jump, second jump. Now I have 2 parts out of 2. Now, if I was to label this part, that is 1 out of 2, okay? This is 1 out of 2, and this is 1 out of 2. If I put those together, 2 halves, that's what that looks like, okay? All right, now looking at the visual model of a number line dealing with halves again. Now, I'm going to start at 0, And then I don't know what my whole is because I haven't counted my jumps yet. Okay, so make sure you do your jumps. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now my whole is made up of 4 fourths. Okay, now I'm going to go back and label. Well, this is one part out of my denominator. My whole is 4. This is my second part. I'm going to label that as 2 out of 4. My whole is 4 parts. And this is my third part of my whole, which is 3 fourths. Okay, and then 4 fourths. All right, so let's pause for a second. All right, so we know that these all are equal because they're all equal to 1 whole. So 1 over 1 is equal to 2 halves and also equal to 4 fourths. Now, if we were to look at which fractions are equal to a half, okay, so this is 1/2 here. And if I go down, now, this part is equal to this part, just like in our area model, okay? So if we say, look at the number line, we could say that one of these halves equal to how many of these fourths? Well, it tells us this right here, okay? So if you want to even put a little point there to indicate that, you may. So then 2 out of 4. So we know that 1/2 is also equivalent to 2 fourths, okay, on the number line. And then, ooh, this looks like a lot. All right, so let's see how many jumps this is. Our last unit fraction, okay? All right, so let's label it to 0 and then label, well, we don't know what the whole is yet, okay? Remember to do your jumps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 is our last unit fraction, okay? 8 eighths, okay? Let's go back and label each one of these points. So this is 1 out of my whole, which is 8 parts. And this is 2 out of my whole of 8 parts. This is 3 parts out of my whole of 8 parts. 4 out of 8 for my whole parts. 5 out of 8 for my whole parts. 6 out of 8 for my whole parts. And 7 out of 8 for my whole parts. Okay? All right. So a half, and then if we continue to see if we have these lined up correctly, we use my highlighter to just keep on going. Well, how many 8s are equivalent to a half? Okay, it's at 4. So then we can say 1/2 is equal to 2 fourths, which are also equivalent to 4 eighths. Okay, boys and girls. So on a number line, you need to make sure to remember to label the 0 and then label how many holes and how many jumps, okay? All right, so that is it for the equivalent fractions to halves, fourths, and eighths, okay? All right, so what I would recommend is that if you don't have number lines, you could make one, okay? Just make sure your whole is broken up into all your 1, 2, 3, 4 holes are broken into, excuse me, the holes are equal length, okay? And then just draw a horizontal line and then make sure your parts are equal. I also might try to see if I could upload the document with the number lines onto your lesson. But if not, just take a straight edge and make sure that I would recommend doing 12 inches. So start with measuring 12 inches and then put your arrows on either side. And then starting with that as your whole, and then half of 12 is 6, right? So that would be your 1/2. And then 4 fourths would be 4, 8, 12 would be 3 parts, okay? And then just break it down to 8 parts. You could do it that way as well. All right, well, I will see you next time. Fraction Fairy to return. I hope y'all are having fun, because I am. See you later.